Welcome back, guys. So I bought a new bike and I replaced the phaser as it got written off, sadly. So I thought I would show you, make a small reveal video. It's nothing special. It's probably what you predicted, based on the history of my mods and crap. It's probably about time I got something like this. I had a tight budget, so I didn't go too fancy. But yeah, have a guess, or yeah, take a guess on what it could be. Here it is. A 2023 registered V-Strom 650. So yeah, you could tell from all the mods and stuff I did on my other bikes that basically what I needed was an adventure tourer type of, maybe not specifically adventure bike, but a touring bike with a fairing of some sort, and like practical features like center stands based on all the mods I did to my naked bike, which was meant to be a sporty naked, and I turned it into some sort of weird hybrid of adventures or something. Anyway, yeah, I'll just go through some of the mods. I got Evotech handguard protectors. It came with the stock plastic OEM Suzuki things. I think they're OEM. I've got this, AliExpress special GPS mount. Camera systems fitted there. There's a module for the saving stuff. And the front camera's right there, and the rear one is like tucked away under the right there. It didn't come with any of the Givi racks or anything, so I had to fit these and the top box mount. It came with an Akrapovic exhaust, which was nice, and I put these 3D printed mounts to hold the disc locks because you need it in London. Not that anyone really wants to steal this type of bike. The GS they might, but not a V-Strom. Yeah, other things are, just the same old stuff that I had on the FZ1 really. Center stand from Outback Trekker. Moto Trek. I can't remember the name, but I'll make a review of it though, because I had a SW Motec one as well. Here you can see the quick shifter module. I don't know why I fitted it. I thought I might miss some of the sporty stuff, and this bike doesn't really suit a quick shifter, but it's actually alright on the motorway when you want to overtake really fast. So you downshift, and then from second on gear, you can go through them really fast, the box, and it's fun for that, but it's not needed for this type of bike. It was it was quite expensive at £280. So yeah, I think it was out of desperation from me trying to keep some sportiness. Here you can see these are Kappa crash bars, which is the same as the Givi ones, minus the Givi plastic badge thing, which I didn't want anyway. Like, I don't put those on when I had Givi bars, regardless. It came with a radiator guard already, and I put a fender extender on, and I put like the longest hugger I can find, which was a pyramid one, but there's nothing there stock, so dirt was getting on the shock. So trying to think what else is there unique with this bike. I'll probably, because I carry a pillion a lot, probably install some hand warmers and stuff. Maybe a heated seat, but I'm not really sure about that. A cool thing about this V-Strom, when you're traveling at speeds and stuff, it's not too unstable with the massive Givi 58 litre Trekker box. My Inazuma actually had a bar shake when you used it, so this one doesn't have that. I do have the Givi Airflow screen and windscreen as well, but honestly it's in the line of my sight, even at the lowest position, on the lowest bracket mounting and the lowest like screen position. It still gets in my eye line, which I really dislike. And if I put it up, looking through a windshield feels super sketchy. I did do one trip on it like that, and it was okay. It was good for catching bugs, but overall I didn't really like it, especially if it's raining, because you're just going to see raindrops unless you're going at speed. I'll put the chain oiler back. A lot of these things were off the FZ1 because that was unfortunately written off. Trying to think of any other mods. I put the Atlas Cruise on as well, which was the cheap copy one, which works okay, but it still sometimes loses grip. The bike came with heated grips, Oxford heated grips already, so I didn't have to fit those. I added the blind spot mirror things as well. It's useful when you're on the highway cruising a lot. I added tank grips just to protect the paint and just in general, but these are pretty crappy. You can see they're decent, sort of expanded somehow. Utility wise, I think this bike is just perfect. Like it does everything I need it to do with the adjustment. It's easy to carry passenger or heavy luggage and stuff. There's a sump card it came with. So at this point I fired the AliExpress Tat Cannon to the bike, and yeah, here's some upgrades. I fitted some Oxford auxiliary lights, so I didn't go AliExpress, but I don't know if they're much better, like, honestly. The switchgear is nice. It's made out of metal and is obviously waterproof, as you can see here, and the light turns on and stuff. But yeah, so that's the Oxford auxiliary lights. I added the handlebar muffs over the handguards because they're massive, so they fit, and I cut a hole so they fit in the bar ends, so they don't flap about in the wind at higher speeds. Yeah, so I ended up adding a heated seat and heated handrails. So these seat pad things, they're pretty good quality, but they look a bit crap on the bike. They don't look very. Yeah, it's a bit Christmas lights with that effect when you turn the ignition on. But they work great actually. I don't really. I just feel like I should add everything I put on the Inazuma on this bike as well. So just adding all these little things too. So these heated grips for the pillion. These these like wraps were very cheap, like £12 I think, and it's got free temperature range. It's all the same electronics as the heated seats it's using. Um, yeah, so I added them, wired them all into the power box in of Power Hub, I think it's called. Here's the wiring, so you can like unscrew it and just remove them during the summer. I added some additional bits like these crash bar bags, which I guess you could store your packet of crisps or something in there, or your disc locks if you didn't have a mount. Um, yeah, and I cleaned up the lever sleeves instead of using that tape. It helps your finger stay warmer in the winter. This is it fully loaded with the Givi Trekker side panniers and the top box and the Givi screen, what it's called, Airflow. Yeah. So it's that one. So let's go into the nitty gritty on how I decided this option or why I went for the 650 in the end. I did consider the 1050. I really did want the 1050, but I couldn't find the RE version, which is a road going version, in any shop, so I couldn't see how tall it was, firstly, and obviously the price was a bit quite high as well, but like you can get them on deals because it's typical Suzuki. You can find a couple of bikes well below the RRP. Um, I thought it had a servo valve on the exhaust, but they don't actually anymore. The V-Strom 1000 had those. I hate those because it's an extra thing to maintain, and they get seized and etc. etc. You can eliminate them, which I did on my old FZ1, but you had to the exhaust would be louder because of it, and I don't want a loud bike anymore. It's just I want to be able to use it at night without waking up the whole neighborhood. Um, the fuel range was another thing. The 1050 has the same size tank as the 650, so it's just going to be, it's going to be less basically on average, unless you're maybe on the motorway a lot, which I'm not usually. I do intend to use in the city as well. Um, so that was the other issue. There was that clutch basket issue. I think it's the basket where it's causes a vibration. This was on the old V-Stroms, and Suzuki mitigated it on the later ones to some degree, but I don't know if it's how it is in long term, because I haven't seen many reviews or whatever after 20 40,000 miles. But yeah, there was like a YouTube channel that used to repair the old version of a brass spacer or something. So yeah, I don't know if they properly fixed that, but I think they fixed the stator magnets on it though, flying off with a shield, just like Yamaha did with their on the FZ1. Um, I'm not too interested in many of the electronics on it. The color screen is not. It's nice if the GPS worked on it, but if it doesn't, then what's the point, in my opinion? Um, the speed limits as well, like there's so many 20 mile per hour zones, so what was the point really in getting 1,000, which is capable of cruising at 100 miles per hour plus? Um, that's kind of its intention. I feel like 1,000 cc bikes are better suited to Germany, where you have an autobahn which has unrestricted areas. Otherwise, what's the point now? Like in the UK anyway, like there's speed cameras everywhere, noise cameras, whatever, 20 mile per hour zones. So it was, I was finding it really hard to justify. I was finding my FZ1 ridiculous when I had that. So I don't see, couldn't find a justification for the extra power. And like the 650 has been completely adequate with a pillion and all the luggage fully loaded. So I don't know who. A lot of people have this like perception where you must have 1,000 if you're carrying a passenger and maybe luggage. No, you don't, because I carry a passenger all the time on a 250 and with luggage sometimes, and it's completely fine. Like it still can reach its top speed, which was around 80 miles per hour. Um, so it's still capable of doing it. So that's just a weird perception that people seem to parrot, I think. 650 is more than capable of carrying two people on luggage, and yeah, you can go very high speeds as well at with that fully loaded. Um, it's just the torque, obviously, maybe slightly less, but on something like a 500 cc plus, I don't think you notice it that much as long as you're in the motorcycle's payload range. So another thing was the adjustable suspension, like for the front. I didn't really need that because on my FZ1 I never felt the need to adjust it from the stock settings once, so it would have felt like a waste that I'm paying extra for it. And the I like coincidentally the 650 doesn't have that, so I was like, maybe this is better for me in the end. Like it's more targeted. It did have the remote preload, which is the thing that I did want, and that makes the most sense, which 1050 has as well. So like that's good. Um, but I don't think I need all the micro adjustability, including the rider modes and stuff like. I never found the need on the FZ1 to use. Well, it didn't have any modes, so I was completely fine riding it during frosty conditions and even during like small blizzards and stuff. So yeah, another thing about the 650, I think it can run on lower octane fuel, but I don't think that's an issue in the UK. But if you did travel and decide to go on a tour, it's more what do you call it, flexible, I guess, because of that. Yeah. So yeah, those were the main reasons why in the end, 1050 didn't really um, win in the end. I think I still would have bought a 1050 if I found it in a with a good price, but and I could try it because I don't know how tall it is and stuff in comparison. But yeah, the 650 was the more uh, what do you call it? Logical slash the the one with the option with the mind, using the mind rather than your heart, I suppose. I did try the 800 in the store as well, but it was a bit pricey for what well, for another parallel twin. So I didn't want another parallel twin because I still have the Suzuki Inazuma, but and also it didn't have cruise control. That was the main thing. Although now I've realized since it was ride by wire, there's loads of aftermarket electronic cruise control systems. So technically, it was possible to install one. Um, but it missing that was the main reason why I was like, there's no point in me spending so much extra on 10 horsepower or something. And because this bike came up with the Akrapovic exhaust and it had 2,500 miles on it, it was practically new, and it got a slight power bump to 75 horsepower, and I thought that was perfect. I don't think it would have been a significant jump um, going to the 800, and also the wind protection looked way worse on the 800 versus the 650. So the main reason why I went for the V-Strom 650 was it felt like the true middle ground bike of all of the bikes, like on all the options. It has a 19-inch wheel, not a 21 or a 17, which is um, probably better for the potholes in England and stuff. The weight isn't too heavy. It's not super light either. It's got sort of like a middle range power deliver like amount of power it has 75 horsepower. It's got like you can kind of ride it sporty. You can also have it as a utility vehicle. It's not like obviously it's not a full sports bike or anything like that, but it's got half fairings. It is a true do-it-all bike, and that was the reason why I went for it, because my plan is once the Inazuma blows up or whatever, I'll probably just have this as my one bike. Um, Maybe I'll buy another one just for fun, like a high CC thing. But like, this was kind of like my one bike sort of idea, and it is the best middle ground for everything. It seems like that's why, yeah, that's why I went for it in the end. And I did try the verses and stuff and look around, and my initially my perfect one bike was a Tracer 700, but uh, there were some things about it, like the hand guard indicator things, like you couldn't reposition them for handlebar muffs. I don't know how you'd even install that if you use those in the winter, because I ride year round, and that's meant to be an all-rounder. So it's it's weird they're all in the way, and you can't really reposition them easily. The indicators on the handlebars, things like that got me off, and it doesn't have a remote preload, which was a bit weird for like a supposedly practical touring machine. Um, so the Versus and the V-Strom seemed a bit more grown up, but um, overall, thought the V-Strom was the best mix for everything else, like with the bigger front wheel and yeah, the long wheelbase is quite handy as well, but it can be a negative sometimes because when you're parking in London, it can stick out a bit, which gives me paranoia with traffic here and trucks and stuff squeezing down roads. The dashboard has a lot of info as well, like average mileage, like range and consumption and stuff like that as well, which I don't really use, but um, the features is good. It has a voltage as well so you can diagnose electrical issues if something weird's happening with your charging system, which is a plus. And the temperature is there as well, the ambient temperature. Um, yeah, so it has a lot of good utility features, and it shows you who it's targeted at, really. So the payload or weight limit is higher as well on this bike versus your traditional bike. It's 415 kilos versus my old Inazuma, my other Inazuma's 365 kilos. And the FZ1 had a similar rating as the Inazuma, around 365 kilos. That's excluding the weight of the bike, so you have to deduct that. But overall, it still works out as a 20 odd kilos higher on this bike than the Inazuma. Um, so yeah, you can carry a lot of weight, a lot more weight, and it's allows for greater flexibility, I guess, if you're carrying a passenger and luggage. So another thing I liked about the V-Strom compared to the Versys and the Tracer 700 was it had it's only one in the category that has a aluminium frame and swing arm. Um, the other bikes I think they have an aluminium swing arm, um, but a steel frame. It's just a preference thing. I think it costs more to manufacture. This is just me taking a guess. And it's more kind of traditional, like my FZ1 had a aluminium frame and swing arm, so it feels a bit more of a premium thing to me. Um, so yeah, that was one of the benefits of choosing the V-Strom. That being said, the swing arm doesn't look very fancy. It looks similar to most box section swing arms, so visually not very good, but I guess the material is more premium. The engine was another reason why I went for the V-Strom. Um, since it has a more unique configuration with a V-twin, everything has a parallel twin nowadays. Despite the new firing order, since I already had the Inazuma, which was also a parallel twin, I fancied something a bit different. And yes, so the V-Strom had the more interesting engine, and the torque curve and all that is quite good as well on it, the mid-range. And I think it costs more to manufacture as well than a parallel twin, so it seemed like better value. Since the bike is so long, you have plenty of room with a pillion, which is another good thing. So they're not always leaning on you, and you can actually, as a rider, carry a backpack still, like a small one, and still have a tiny bit of space without getting squashed between the pillion. So that's not something that I could do on other bikes, usually like nakeds and stuff. So that's another perk. It's roomy, but again, it's got a long wheelbase as well, so that's the downside. Another benefit is the large tank, of course, the range. It can do 200 miles plus. I average around 220, 230 before I fill up, but I can probably push it. So yeah, Low speed riding is stable thanks to the long wheelbase, and the Suzuki's low RPM assist helps with maneuvers such as U-turns. It has a tight steering angle, which helps a lot as well. But because of the long wheelbase, you're still going to need some space, so it's not as easy as a city commuter. In terms of city traffic riding, or this bike's ability to hustle city traffic compared to my previous naked bikes, I would say it's around 90% as fast. The only major change is the longer wheelbase and wider handlebars, but they sit higher so they can go over some vehicles' mirrors. Whereas my old naked bikes were usually level. So overall, it's basically on par. Um, the turning radius obviously is good, but the front wheel's longer, so you need a bit more space to like switch through cars to the other side of the road. Um, Obviously, if you choose to go through the opposing lane, you have more space, and in that case, it doesn't save you any more time than a naked bike or any other type of bike. But when you're in between traffic or cars, it's a little bit tighter with this, but no noticeable difference in terms of commute times. It's negligible. I would say that this adventure bike for me, obviously the segment's new for me. I never ridden an adventure bike before, but riding one it feels a bit like riding a train almost. It's quite a bit heftier, obviously, like in terms of physical size and the handlebar position and stuff. Makes you feel commanding, is what I think the phrase that people compare it to. Um, Yeah, so it does feel like you're riding something a bit more substantial than your average naked bike, especially, if you have no screen or anything on your naked bike. It feels like a toy almost. It's so like compact and quite easy to shift about. Um, Whereas, yeah, the adventure bikes are a bit heftier things, but it doesn't mean that it makes it worse off in the city and stuff. It's quite similar actually. In That's why you see GS riders in the city not having much problem keeping up with traffic. I didn't see any other like l- um I didn't struggle to keep up with many other riders so who ride different styles of bikes. So overall it didn't really affect my time. If you're riding safely, I think it doesn't matter what sort of bike you have really. You just measure the risks, and sometimes you make gains in certain sections of the city and sometimes you can lose some time, but it's about being safe really. So some negative points of the bike: it doesn't have cruise control, it's not ride by wire, so it's not easy to add one. There are systems available, but they're quite complex if you want true cruise control, or you can get the throttle locks, which like the Atlas one clone and stuff, which I opted for, but it's not ideal. And for some reason, Suzuki didn't even give it to the 800, which is ride by wire. So it's bizarre because this type of bike really should have it. Another disappointing thing was since the bike was only a year old, there was some corrosion under the triple tree, the headlight bracket, and also near the front brake piston. Yeah, it's quite disappointing, but I think it's a common trend amongst all the manufacturers with lower quality coating. Another weird thing was I read in the manual if you're carrying a passenger, you need to increase the rear tire pressure from 36 to 42 psi, which was a bit strange to me because it comes with a remote preload adjuster, and I thought the whole like practicality aspect of it was you can just twist the dial and increase preload and carry a passenger quickly rather than also pumping the tires.
But I guess they are two separate things. It's just an added like step because my Suzuki Inazuma it's 36 psi in the rear with and without a passenger. So it would have been good to just be the same. I think from the FZ1 it was 42 for both as well, if my memory is right. So that's another weird thing. Like I wish if it had like it's got a remote preload. Why do you need to change the PSI for passenger? Why didn't they think of this? Or yeah, but anyway, I do ride it alone solo with 42 psi, and it seems to handle fine. So I don't really bother reducing the air. Another point is the length of the bike. It's a very long bike. Obviously, it's a big bike. It's got a 20-liter tank, but also it's very long, and it's a combination of the V-twin engine and the 19-inch front wheel, and the long wheelbase in general. Uh, so it makes parking in the city and stuff a bit tricky. The turning circle is very good, so it has benefits in that sense. But the wheelbase, when you're parking it, the wheel can stick out quite a bit, and as I mentioned earlier, it's quite nerve-wracking sometimes when you're just hoping that no one's gonna hit the wheel um, while it's parked. Obviously, you can angle the bike as well, but you take up more space in the bay. Other things I notice is the low seat is not very comfortable in long journeys. So during like if you ride for like 2 3 hours, it's okay. By the third hour, it's quite painful, and uh, during short journeys, it's actually quite comfortable. So it's weird. Like it feels better than my other bikes in short journeys, but on the long journeys, it starts to get pretty uncomfortable. And I found my old bikes with like a extra seat pad or something to be more comfortable than this on long journeys. So it's a bit weird. The stock height seat is a bit higher and it's different shape, so uh, it might put pressure in different points, making it more comfortable. But because of the compromise of the low seat, it's probably has a different way of working, which causes it to be more uncomfortable. Could just be the foam amount, it could just be pressure points or something. So that wasn't ideal. I did notice the O2 sensor was cable tied to a brake line, um, and I verified this in the manual. It's like this from the factory. It's just very strange because it looks like it's something that a DIYer would do, and yeah, not from the factory basically. But the O2 sensor comes with like a rubber mount, which you usually see on the brake hoses and things, and they slip into like a clamp or yeah, a holder somewhere. But apparently, this is how Suzuki decided to do it from factory, and it looks a bit cheap. In terms of maintenance, the Suzuki V-Strom isn't the easiest bike to maintain, especially when it comes to the valves. Because it's a V-twin, it has two cam chain tensioners that you have to remove in order to get the cams out, then change the shims. Um, I know the V-Strom 1000 and maybe the 1050s, they have gear-driven cams, so they can come out without messing with the cam chain. Or yeah, technically it's probably not a cam chain at that point, but I think the gear-driven cams are the things that gives it that whining style noise as well when you hearing it tick over. Um, yeah, so actually that was a big reason why I wanted to get the 1000 over the 650, just the easier maintenance. But any V-twin is going to have two cam covers you have to take off as well, and it's a bit extra work for the for the benefit of the configuration. Another thing I noticed about Suzuki bikes with cable clutches is that they usually require periodic clutch push rod adjustment, which is internal. So the older SVs and V twin engines, they had it external, so you didn't have to open or remove the clutch cover. But the modern Suzukis, it seems that you have to. Um, which is slightly annoying because when it comes to that, you have to drain the oil. I had to do that on the Inazuma a couple of times. Well, you can get away with it on the side stand, but with the V-Strom, there's like the cooling systems also involved, so you have to drain the cooling system as well as the oil to get to the clutch push rod and make the adjustment. So for a touring bike, you'd hope it doesn't require something like that, but I don't know what different engineering principles Yamaha used, but on my FZ1, you never had to remove the clutch cover unless you were literally changing the clutch. The adjustments just done at the lever end or at the engine side end, or well, it didn't have an engine side. It had a secondary adjuster on the cable, but that was under the airbox. But that was all it was required. You didn't have to take anything out and drain oils and stuff periodically. So I wish Suzuki did the same thing, but I don't know. I'm not an engineer, so I don't know exactly what the reasoning is behind this. Since the Suzuki 1050 and 1000 have a hydraulic clutch, they shouldn't require this adjustment. So that's another potential benefit for them. Hydraulic clutches usually self-adjust from what I remember. You might have looked into the service intervals for the V-Strom 650 out of curiosity and noticed there's two regions that have so the US and Europe. We follow in the UK the European schedule, and that one has longer intervals. It follows an oil change at 7,500 miles instead of the US's 3,500, if I recall correctly. Um, yeah, so that's not bad. That's quite a high intervals, higher than my FZ1 at 6,000 and my Inazuma at 3,000. I think it's what all the brands are doing nowadays. They're lengthening the intervals. Not sure if that's because of better oils or something now, or if it's like a competitive thing and they want to one up each other for longer intervals. But yeah, I probably wouldn't reach that in a year anyway near that to be honest. But unless I go touring, uh, obviously. But yeah, so it's not bad in terms of intervals. So seat height was probably my biggest concern with trying an adventure bike. Luckily, this bike came with a low seat and the stock seat with together, so I could try both essentially. So for context, I'm 5'7" with a 30-inch inseam. The reason why I needed the ability to sort of move the bike with my feet still is in traffic. Sometimes you need to take a different route and back up a bit, and also when you're parking, sometimes I need to back up into the bay, and getting off will be too impractical and take more time. And obviously, city centre is very busy, and there's going to be people, drivers and stuff, getting annoyed or being very impatient. So that's why it was important for me to be able to at least maneuver the bikes to some degree while still sitting on it. In terms of leg room or knee bend, I don't really feel much of a difference with the different seats. So yeah, I wouldn't really factor that in that much. I can easily still flat foot the bike on one foot with the stock seat, so general riding isn't a problem really. I would also say the stock seat is definitely thicker in terms of padding, obviously, but it has different pressure points as well, and I think it feels more comfortable to be honest. So it has a very good light as well. As you can see, it's very widely spread and it lights up a lot of the road. One of the benefits to this V-Strom is when you put the high beam on, the low beam also stays on, unlike a typical H4 single bulb on a naked. In this clip you can see me toggle between high and low beam. One of the first things I bought when I got the bike was the Givi Airflow screen. I read on the forum that it was amazing, loads of people was praising it and stuff. But I didn't really look into it too much. I just assumed it would be good. But I think it's better for taller people. The stock screen seems to suit me well at my 170 centimeter height. Um, I've not, so I'm used to naked bikes, so this category's kind of new to me with the fairing. Um, and I noticed with the stock screen, I could hear my Bluetooth intercoms at highway motorway speeds fine, which I'm not usually able to on the naked bikes. Um, but with the Givi, I didn't feel much of a difference from the stock. So I'm sort of questioning the point of the upgrade, really. Even when I raise it to the highest position and stuff, it barely makes any real difference. And on the lowest position as well, which actually I think Give you recommend it's below your line of sight, which is understandable because of rain and stuff that can get on the screen. Um, yeah, so on the lowest position, which is the windscreen mounting position on the frame, with the screen on the lowest uh, setting as well, it's about 8 centimeters taller than the stock screen. So it's kind of confusing to explain, but um, with the stock screen on the highest position on the bike, it's still lower than the Givi Airflow on its lowest position on the lowest setting on the bike as well. So uh, it's really tall screen basically is what I'm trying to say, and in its lowest possible setting, it's still in the line of my sight. If I sit upright, then I can see over it. But if I'm like slightly slouched, which you're likely to do when you're touring, it just gets in my line of sight. And this is with the low seat. Um, and it does get very irritating sometimes, especially if it's raining as well, and you've got the raindrops and stuff on the screen. When you're close to cars and traffic and stuff, it's all like, blurry and things. So your sort of gauge for distance stuff is a bit more obscured. One benefit of the screen is it's wider than stock, so it might deflect more wind from the sides. Um, on its tallest position, it's 18 centimeters taller than the stock screen. So it can get really tall, which is why I think it's primarily beneficial for taller users. Some disappointing things about the screen is on its lowest position, while mounted on its lowest mounting point on the bike, you can see a lot of headlight glare on the screen. Like it's sort of the headlight sort of makes the screen glow in the dark, and it's kind of distracting. Um, and that's because the secondary screen, I don't think it's blacked out towards the bottom. I think, which is the cause. Another slightly annoying thing about the screen was it doesn't come with the rubber grommets for the mounting points, and it's not a cheap screen, so you'd expect Givi to just add those in, but yeah, you have to swap them over from the stock screen or buy a new set if you want to change the screens out during the summer or different seasons and stuff. I got the non-XT version of the bike, which I actually prefer. I feel like the XT version is more for styling exercise rather than a bike with extra practicality. The spoke wheels have to periodically be checked for tension and retightened if loose. I just prefer the simpler or simplicity of the cast wheels. About the rear rack, I went for the SR3 112 kit instead of the aluminium SRA 3112 kit that Givi make. The reason is because the M7 plate can handle 10 kilos max, and the actual rack on the V-Strom is rated to a max of 10 kilos as well, whereas the aluminium plate is rated at 6 kilos. So it looks fancier and it costs more, but its rating is less. So for me, I thought it was worth going for the plastic one in that case. Just a helpful tip installing these throttle locks. I saw another YouTuber called ADV Matt suggest using grip tape if the lock slips. I tried it out and it worked perfectly. The tape is thin enough that it doesn't grab with the lock disengaged. Without this, it will gradually roll off. So it definitely helps hold the throttle. The bottom section is slightly tapered out, as you can see here, so it actually grips better. But obviously, no one's going to be cruising at full throttle, I don't think. Here's what the tape looks like. You can order it online. There's various sites that sell grip tape. This is not the sandpaper style, it's like a TPU material, and they're quite thin, so it fits through the gap easily. This is the profile I use for the switchgear. So a quick note on Suzuki throttles. Towards the inside, there's usually a lip which the stock rubber grip goes over. If you install heated grips, it's exposed, and using that gap, that's where you can install the throttle lock. It allows a clean install basically. Without the throttle lock there, it's kind of like empty space and looks a bit weird. I wanted to retain the stock levers this time. I'm over that phase of getting those Chinese levers and stuff, especially on this bike. I think they do look quite tacky, really. Um, so yeah, and I think it's better for adjustment as well. And it's easier when it's longer. I don't like those short levers anymore. Um, so I went with the Evotech handguards. I did think about getting the bark busters, but these Evotech guards were bespoke for the specific bike model, which means they likely tested it for vibrations and usage for the bike specifically. So I didn't want to get something universal like the bark busters when I could get this instead. And I initially had a concern where I weighed them, and they were heavier than the stock bar ends, but the weight was spread across the handguard, whereas the bar end has most of the weight, all the way actually at the end of the bar, right? So, but after testing it for a while, they're absolutely fine, and they don't have any bad vibrations really, nothing worse than the stock ones. So, and they protect the levers if I drop the bike somewhere, and the handguards. So obviously they're designed to go around the handguards. So they're unique in that sort of sense, the OEM ones. Um, yeah, so they fit. They're really well finished. It's the first time I bought something from Evotech. It seems really well finished. I don't think. I think they were designed to take a hit. So, which is why they're handguards, right? So supposedly Evotech tested these, but time will tell. You can install them without the handguards if you want more wind. Yeah, in the summer or something. So yeah, overall, I would say they were a decent purchase. So that was my brain dump. It was months of thinking and looking at variables and what's going on in the market currently. I guess I just went for the sensible option, and yeah, this video is a bit random here and there because I've been remembering ideas and things I was taking into account randomly and just adding them, tacking them on here and there. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. And if I get a new bike, maybe I'll make another one. I'm not sure. I don't know when that would be either. But thanks for watching this long video.